interesting thing about culture is that culture is something universal. It's not just something part of organization. So the information we're learning about creating culture is relevant for any kind of culture you're creating, whether you're creating a culture for a group on campus, or maybe you're in a fraternity or sorority, or even just creating a culture within your own family. These are all things that apply to that, as well as creating culture in an organizational setting. And so we're going to break it down by different components of what help create culture, or what makes up culture in general. And these are very basic. We're not going to really dive too deep into them, but they're concepts that we should understand. The first concept we're going to look at is called beliefs. I'm sure you've heard the word beliefs before. It's the idea that you trust something to be true. You believe something to be the case, or the truth, or the reality of the situation. And it's no different in an organizational culture. Your belief about whether the organization cares about you or not, your belief about whether or not the guest is always right, your belief about the value of your job, those all will play a role in the culture of the organization around you. And they're all whether or not you think something is real or something is truthful. And so in general, what we want to happen is that we want the beliefs to reflect what the organization stands for. So if I'm going to use Southwest as an example, Southwest Airlines. If I'm a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines, then I want to believe that the company cares about me as an employee, and I want to believe that by caring about me as an employee, I should then care about the guests and the customers in order to keep my job and do the best job possible. So it's the beliefs about what should happen, how it should happen, how people feel about me, how I feel about other people, and how I should do my job. Taking that one step further, we go into what values are. Beliefs are believing something to be true. Values are what kind of weight you put in that. Is that good? I might believe that the company doesn't care about me, say. I could believe that my company is very harsh and they don't care about the employees and they just want customer. But I might value giving good customer service because I really care about being in the hospitality industry. So even though my beliefs about the company might not fit my values are what I believe are the right things to do versus the wrong things to do. Oftentimes, this is also seen within organizational settings about what is acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior based on the values of an organization. So not just the values of an individual, but the values of the organization. Does the organization value time, making sure that you are minimalizing time as much as possible? So if I'm a housekeeper, do they value cutting back costs by making sure it only takes me 20 minutes to clean a room? These are considered values. The next is a little more fun. It's called norms. And norms actually are encompassing quite a few different things. So we're going to break down norms into a couple different categories. Think of norms in this sense, as norms of behavior. These are ways you're supposed to act or behave in a certain setting, and they're just expected of us. It's not something you think about. These are inherently subconscious. So if you played sports as a kid, or maybe even now play sports, after you finished the game, maybe you went and shook everyone's hand of the opposing team. This is a norm of behavior. It's expected behavior. If you were not to do this behavior, we would think, wow, that's pretty weird. So some organizational behaviors that we think are norms are making eye contact, maybe greeting a guest within 15 feet of us, or even when you're on the phone, you're supposed to smile. I know that when I worked for Drury Hotels, we had something called smile calls. And what would happen is we would have someone from the company call in and basically infer that they wanted to make a reservation, even though they weren't truthfully making a reservation, and they would rate you based on a smile call. Did they think you were smiling while you're doing that? And then, of course, a number of other different factors of a good call. So these are the expected behaviors we have of our employees. And for an example of this is from the book. This is Gaylord Hotels uses this, and they actually require all their employees to turn around, and these are norms of behavior that they expect from them. So making eye contact, looking everyone in the eyes, speaking first and last, which means that you're greeting the guest before they talk to you, and you're the last one to greet or to say goodbye to them before they leave. So they never leave feeling like there was something unsaid or unresponded to for the guest. Making sure you look sharp. We're going to come back to that with norms of appearance. Knowing everything that you're supposed to know. So if a guest asks you a question about where something is, you should be able to answer that because that's a norm of behavior. Enjoy your job is basically where the discover and delight come in, and then make it right. If something goes wrong or something isn't the way it should be, is that you actually make it right. And so these are norms of behavior. Another norm, which we just saw briefly before, is a norm of appearance. These are expected ways of dress. Maybe they have to do with hygiene, maybe they have to do with personal choices. Does your company allow tattoos? Do they allow non-visible tattoos? Do they allow piercings for men as well as women? Maybe do they allow beards or not beards? I know there was a long period of time where no company would ever allow a man to come in unshaven, or he had to have a complete full beard. Now that's changing. We're finding that the norms of appearance within our society as a whole, not just in organizations, are changing. And with those changing norms of appearance within society, we're finding norms of appearance changing within our actual organizations as well. And so to give you guys a very, very diverse example, let's look at Ritz-Carlton versus Hooters. You can imagine that the dress code for Hooters is probably very different from the dress code at the Ritz-Carlton. And okay, we're going to come back to that. So what I would expect a hostess at Hooters to wear versus a host or someone at the front of the office at Ritz-Carlton are going to be very different. But that's also going to help determine for customers what they're expected to wear. So these norms of appearance are helping promote who we are as a company. For example, Disney requires that their employees look as natural as possible. They have natural hair colors, natural hairstyles, no piercings, no visible tattoos. They're not supposed to have crazy nail polish. Like, I don't know if you guys can see mine is this crazy macaroni and cheese color. And they're not supposed to have anything that looks different. They're supposed to be homey, family-oriented. They're not really supposed to stand out. They're supposed to fit a role. Now, if you compare that to Starbucks, Starbucks allows a lot more freedom of expression through appearance. They still have to wear the uniform, but they can have tattoos. They can have different colored hair. They can look different than what they normally do. And it just sets a different atmosphere and environment based on those norms of appearance. Now, taking that one step further, what we find in norms of advertising is that we are actually helping customers understand the norms of behavior and dress, so both those appearance as well as behavior, before they ever step foot in the establishment. And set by those norms of behavior and appearance, they can know how they're supposed to interact with our employees. So we're actually promoting our cultural organization even outside of our employees. I have two videos here you can watch. One is a Hooters commercial, and one is a commercial for Ritz-Carlton, going back to that original example. And if you watch the video for Hooters, what you'll find is that the men come in and they're salivating and they're staring and they're flabbergasted and they're dressed more casually, and the hostesses are dressed differently. And they're saying it's okay to come in here and maybe act against things that are typically social norms, typical norms of behavior in society. You're not supposed to stare at someone else. You're not supposed to salivate over them. You're maybe not supposed to have these behaviors. But in this location, it's acceptable. It's acceptable for what we do. And so that's what they're setting through advertising. Ritz-Carlton, at the same time, their commercial is very formal. You find all the people wearing business suits, very expensive clothes. There's a certain way of talking and interacting with each other, and these expectations are also set before a person ever walks into the property. And so you already know what to do even before you get there. So next we're going to look at folkways and mores. It is pronounced mores, almost like a moray eel. It's just spelled differently. And these are the unwritten rules of behavior. So these include taboos and norms, but that go above and beyond normal norms that I might write out, such as the Gaylord Palms did. Making eye contact, yes, that might be a norm of behavior, but a folkway are things that I instinctively and naturally do based on what the organization stands for. So this might be, do I call someone by their first name or their last name? Right? There's no inherently norm of behavior that says one way is better than the other. It is all set by the culture and the organization. Other things might be when I greet someone, I shake their hands, or making sure that if I work in the restaurant, if I'm not busy helping my tables or running food, that I'm actually rolling silverware to make sure that's ready. So these are just common ways of behavior, things that you're expected to do without really thinking about it. They're routine and casual interactions. Mores takes that one step further. What Mores says is that these are the folkways that have some sort of weight to them. These have an ethical concern with them. Maybe they have, if you were to break a more, you're breaking more than just social norming. So if I'm supposed to call you by your first name and I call you by your last name, okay, there's nothing ethically wrong with that. we probably want to fix it. It makes it maybe us feel uncomfortable if that's not the norm of behavior. But what a more is I'm doing something that is inherently ethically against what the culture stands for. So for example, I know in my company it was unacceptable for a supervisor to date a line employee because that relationship could be taken advantage of. And so we would consider that a more. It wasn't technically ever written out in our code book. There wasn't a rule against it, but it was an unwritten rule, this more of what acceptable behavior would be. These are also taboos. So taboos are things that are unacceptable in society, things that we would say you're not supposed to do. In a different culture, different organization, maybe they're perfectly acceptable, but not here. So a more might be if we didn't finish the full toilet paper roll and we work in housekeeping, that maybe in one organization it's okay to take the rest of that home when you put a new one on, but maybe in this company that's considered stealing. And so that would become a more, something morally wrong. Just something fun with folkways. A folkway might be something like farting in public, right? There's no ethical concern with that, but you fart in public, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Like, if you can say that's a weird behavior, that's because you're looking at norms of behaviors or folkways. And mores would be like, I can't believe so-and-so did that, like cheating on a girlfriend or boyfriend or something more serious. That would be your mores.